There are men who spend their entire lives mastering numbers, learning how to move money across continents, how to manipulate markets, how to predict panic before the rest of the world even notices danger approaching. But eventually, every powerful man forgets one thing. Numbers don't betray you. People do. And sometimes, the most dangerous person in your life is the one sitting silently beside you every single night. Because silence is deceptive. Silence looks harmless, patient, passive, but silence watches, silence remembers, and sometimes silence records everything. Tonight's story is not simply about fraud. It is not merely about stolen money, or financial corruption, or another wealthy executive collapsing beneath his own greed. No, this story happened inside a marriage, inside whispered conversations at midnight, inside expensive homes where appearances mattered more than honesty, inside a relationship slowly rotting beneath designer suits, luxury parties, and public admiration. Tonight, we talk about a hedge fund king who convinced the world he could predict economic collapse while secretly becoming the architect of his own. A man celebrated as a financial genius until federal agents walked into a ballroom and ended the performance forever. But the FBI was never his greatest threat. The greatest threat was the woman who had spent 3 years quietly documenting the destruction of his empire, his wife. The only person close enough to witness the transformation. The only person who saw the exact moment ambition became addiction. And the only person who understood that the man she married no longer feared losing money. He feared losing control. Welcome back to the Unspoken chapter. Tonight's story is called The Wife Who Recorded the Fall of a Financial Empire. And trust me, this one only gets darker. His name was Adrian Vale. And on Wall Street, people spoke about him carefully. Not because he was loud, not because he demanded attention, but because Adrian possessed something infinitely more dangerous than charisma. Control. The kind of control that made nervous investors calm down the moment he entered a room. The kind of emotional restraint that made billionaires trust him with fortunes. The kind of precision that made financial journalists describe him as the man who never panics. By the age of 46, Adrian controlled billions in assets through Vale Capital Management. His interviews were watched by millions. Business networks replayed his predictions like prophecy. Politicians attended his charity dinners. Celebrities begged for private investment meetings. To the world, Adrian Vale represented intelligence, discipline, vision. But what nobody understood was that Adrian's obsession with control began long before the money, long before the penthouses, long before the tailored suits and private jets. It began in Detroit, inside a collapsing home during the 2008 financial crisis. Adrian was 19 years old when his father lost everything. The factory shut down, the mortgage collapsed, debt collectors started calling daily, and Adrian watched something happen to his father that terrified him permanently. He watched a man lose dignity, one financial disaster, and suddenly his father became smaller, quieter, ashamed. Adrian never forgot the sound of his parents arguing late at night about unpaid bills. He never forgot the humiliation of eviction notices taped to the front door. He never forgot his father crying in the garage when he thought nobody could hear him. And somewhere during those years, Adrian developed a belief that poisoned everything afterward. Money was not luxury. Money was safety. Money was power. Money was survival. And people who grow up terrified of powerlessness often become addicted to control. Adrian met Vanessa Hale at Columbia University. He was studying finance. She was studying investigative journalism, which meant she spent her life learning how to uncover deception. Vanessa was intelligent in a completely different way than Adrian. He understood systems. She understood people. He noticed data patterns. She noticed emotional contradictions. And somehow, they balanced each other perfectly. At first, their relationship began in tiny coffee shops near campus. Long conversations about politics, corporate corruption, economic inequality. Back then, Adrian genuinely believed he wanted to change the financial system. He spoke passionately about transparency, about ethical investing, about rebuilding trust between wealthy institutions and ordinary people. And Vanessa loved him for that, because beneath his ambition, she saw sincerity, or at least, what looked like sincerity. For years, they built a beautiful life together. Late-night conversations, shared struggles, tiny apartments with broken heating systems, dreams that felt impossible. They built their future together brick by brick, and perhaps that is what makes betrayal so devastating. The fact that it rarely begins with hatred, it begins with trust. After graduation, Adrian entered the world of high finance like a man escaping drowning water. He worked obsessively, 80-hour weeks, no vacations, no distractions. While other analysts chased status, Adrian chased certainty, and eventually, his brilliance became impossible to ignore. He predicted market instability months before major downturns. He recognized hidden leverage patterns inside collapsing firms. He understood fear better than most economists understood optimism, because Adrian himself lived in fear constantly. Fear of becoming powerless again, fear of humiliation, fear of losing control. And ironically, those fears made him extraordinarily successful. By 38, he launched Vale Capital, and within 5 years, the hedge fund exploded into Wall Street legend. Investors described Adrian like a financial prophet. When markets became unstable, people waited for Adrian's opinion before making decisions. Retirement funds trusted him. Professional athletes trusted him. Actors, politicians, widows investing life savings after losing spouses. Entire futures placed carefully into Adrian Vale's hands, and every successful prediction fed something dangerous inside him. Not confidence. Invincibility. The first lie was tiny. That is how almost every catastrophic fraud begins. Not with massive theft, small compromises, an omitted disclosure, a manipulated risk report, a temporary transfer just to stabilize quarterly numbers. At first, Adrian justified everything. It's temporary. I'll correct it later. Everyone on Wall Street does this. And maybe the most dangerous sentence ever spoken by intelligent people is this: I can control it, because corruption rarely arrives dramatically. It arrives logically, step by step, compromise by compromise, until morality becomes negotiable. At first, Adrian simply shifted investor funds to conceal losses. Then he fabricated performance numbers. Then offshore shell companies appeared. Then illegal leverage. Then hidden accounts. And slowly, the line between strategy and fraud disappeared completely. But publicly, Vale Capital looked unstoppable. Magazine covers, awards, luxury conferences in Switzerland. Adrian standing confidently beside world leaders discussing financial responsibility. And nobody suspected the empire was quietly bleeding to death beneath the surface. Not even Vanessa. At least not yet. Vanessa noticed the changes before anyone else. Not because she understood finance, because she understood Adrian. She noticed he stopped sleeping. Then she noticed the drinking, hidden bottles, late-night pacing, paranoia disguised as caution. Adrian began checking windows repeatedly before bed, double-locking doors, silencing phone calls whenever she entered rooms. And perhaps the most disturbing change of all, he stopped laughing, publicly. He remained charming, controlled, perfect, but privately, silence consumed him. Vanessa would sit beside him during dinner, while Adrian stared into space like a man mentally calculating disasters nobody else could see. And every time she asked if he was okay, he answered too quickly. I'm fine. People lying under pressure always answer too fast. One night, Vanessa walked into his office unexpectedly. Adrian slammed his laptop shut instantly, too fast, too defensive, and in that single moment, her instincts activated. Her husband no longer behaved like a stressed executive. He behaved like someone hiding evidence. For months, Vanessa said nothing. She simply watched, observed, collected details quietly. Because intuition is terrifying when it begins connecting dots you desperately hope are unrelated. She noticed burner phones, encrypted emails, meetings scheduled through private assistants, conversations ending abruptly whenever she entered rooms. Then one evening, everything changed. Adrian left for London unexpectedly, and while cleaning the dining room, Vanessa found a folder he accidentally left behind. At first, the documents meant nothing. Complex financial spreadsheets, investment structures, corporate transfer logs. But Vanessa was intelligent enough to notice repetition, duplicate accounts, unusual transfers, money routed through charitable foundations, transactions disguised beneath layers of shell corporations. And suddenly, her blood ran cold, because she realized something horrifying. This wasn't aggressive investing. This was theft. Professional, systematic, massive theft. Adrian wasn't protecting clients. He was stealing from them. Vanessa confronted him carefully at first. Soft questions, gentle opportunities for honesty. But Adrian manipulated every conversation, deflected blame, changed subjects, made her question her own instincts, and slowly, Vanessa emotionally stopped behaving like a wife. She started behaving like an investigator. Quietly, she began recording conversations, not for revenge, for protection. Because deep down, she sensed something catastrophic approaching. She documented late-night admissions, financial contradictions, exhausted confessions spoken during moments Adrian believed nobody was paying attention. And what frightened her most was how normal he still looked. That is the terrifying thing about moral collapse. Sometimes evil still wears tailored suits, still attends charity events, still kisses you goodbye before work, still tells people it loves them. Meanwhile, inside Vale Capital, the fraud deepened. New investor money covered old losses. Analysts were pressured into silence. Auditors were bribed. Performance reports became fiction. And Adrian, the man once obsessed with controlling risk, became consumed by surviving exposure. People imagine financial criminals enjoying luxury while destroying lives. But the truth is uglier. Most become prisoners of the lies required to maintain their illusion. Adrian stopped sleeping entirely. He developed tremors in his hands. He checked financial news obsessively at 3 a.m. He snapped violently at employees over minor mistakes. His fear transformed into rage, because fear that remains trapped too long eventually mutates into aggression. Vanessa watched him deteriorate slowly, like observing a building collapsing internally before the exterior finally caves in. One night, she woke up at 4 a.m. and found Adrian sitting alone in darkness. No television, no phone, just staring out the penthouse window at Manhattan. Frozen, silent, and for a moment, he looked terrified. Not of prison, not of losing money, of being seen. Because beneath all power, Adrian remained that same frightened boy from Detroit, still trying to outrun humiliation, still trying to prove he would never become powerless again. But greed is deceptive. It convinces people they are escaping fear, while actually becoming consumed by it. The collapse began at a charity gala in Manhattan. Crystal chandeliers glowed above wealthy investors, pretending morality could be purchased through philanthropy. Champagne glasses clinked softly. Classical music echoed through the ballroom. And Adrian Vale stood at the center of it all, performing confidence. Investors surrounded him eagerly, asking about markets, economic forecasts, global instability, and Adrian answered perfectly. Calm, controlled, precise. Vanessa sat beside him silently, watching him carefully, because by then, she already knew the truth. Then Adrian received a text message, and for half a second, his mask disappeared. Fear, real fear. Vanessa noticed immediately. Moments later, federal agents entered the ballroom, quietly, professionally. The music continued playing. Most guests didn't notice at first, but Vanessa did. An agent approached Adrian slowly. "Mr. Vale, we need you to come with us." And in that instant, the performance ended. No charisma, no confidence, no emotional control, just terror, pure human terror, the kind no amount of money can erase. By morning, every major financial network carried the story. Hedge fund billionaire arrested. $48 million fraud investigation. Investors devastated. Suddenly, the man once worshipped by Wall Street became a national symbol of corruption. Former clients cried during interviews. Families discovered retirement savings had vanished. College funds disappeared overnight. One man broke down publicly saying, "I trusted him with everything." And Vanessa watched all of it alone inside the penthouse. The same penthouse once filled with laughter, now silent, cold, empty. Because corruption never destroys only money. It destroys trust. And trust, once broken, rarely returns completely. Then came the revelation that shattered Vanessa emotionally. Federal investigators informed her that Adrian had placed multiple fraudulent entities under her name, without her knowledge, without consent, which meant Vanessa herself could face legal consequences. And suddenly, everything became horrifyingly clear. Adrian hadn't merely lied to investors. He had prepared to sacrifice everyone around him to survive exposure, including his own wife. That realization broke something inside her permanently, because financial betrayal feels different when it comes from strangers. But when it comes from the person who once promised to protect you, it becomes existential. Vanessa sat alone one night, staring across the city skyline, and understood a devastating truth. The man she married no longer existed. Or maybe worse, perhaps this had always been inside him, waiting. Weeks later, Vanessa visited Adrian inside federal detention. No reporters, no cameras, just fluorescent lights and silence. Adrian looked smaller somehow, older. Like prison had stripped away the illusion of invincibility ambition spent decades constructing. For several minutes, neither spoke. Finally, Adrian looked at her and asked quietly, "When did you stop loving me?" Vanessa stared at him for a long time, then answered softly, "When you stopped believing other people were real." Silence. Heavy. Final. Because greed destroys empathy first, and once empathy disappears, everyone becomes collateral damage. Investors, employees, friends, family, marriage. Human beings become numbers. And numbers are easy to sacrifice. Before leaving, Vanessa slowly placed a recorder onto the metal table. Adrian frowned, confused. Then she said quietly, "I kept every conversation." And in that moment, he truly collapsed. Not because of prison, not because of public humiliation, but because someone had witnessed the truth completely, without excuses, without performance. Someone had seen exactly who he became, and documented all of it. There are people listening tonight who believe betrayal always looks emotional, romantic, personal. But some of the most devastating betrayals in human history happen financially, quietly, through contracts, through signatures, through trust placed into the hands of someone who values control more than humanity. And perhaps the most terrifying thing about Adrian Vale is that he did not begin as a monster. He began afraid of poverty, afraid of humiliation, afraid of becoming powerless. Then ambition entered the picture, then success, then ego, then addiction. And slowly, one compromise at a time, he convinced himself survival justified everything. That is how moral collapse happens. Not suddenly, gradually, quietly, one lie at a time, one justification at a time, until eventually, the person staring back in the mirror becomes unrecognizable. And maybe that is the true lesson hidden inside stories like this. Power does not corrupt everyone, but power reveals what fear has been hiding all along. Tonight's story was not really about a hedge fund or stolen millions. It was about identity, about what happens when a person becomes so terrified of losing control. They destroy every human relationship, protecting them from themselves. Because Adrian Vale spent his entire life trying to avoid becoming powerless. And in the end, his obsession with control destroyed the only things that actually mattered. Trust, love, human connection, his marriage, his future, and ultimately, himself. This was the unspoken chapter, where silence speaks louder than power, where greed exposes the soul, and where the people sitting closest to us often witness the truths we spend their lives trying to hide. If this story affected you, comment below. I saw the warning signs. And subscribe to the Unspoken chapter for more cinematic stories about betrayal, corruption, emotional manipulation, financial crime, power, and the dark truths behind success. See you in the next chapter.